the Serranía de la Lindosa in the Colombian Amazon, there are tens of thousands of rock paintings dating to the late Pleistocene. A paper published last summer in the journal Advances in Rock Art Studies analyzed panels from the site called Cerro Azul and, in the context of ethnographic and ethnohistoric accounts, discussed how the perspectivist and animistic cosmologists of indigenous groups in the region may have been at the heart of these incredible tableaus. In this video, I discuss this paper and take a look at some of these beautiful works of art. A lot of what I'm about to discuss is from the field of anthropology, which, when discussing the beliefs of indigenous groups in the Amazon, is a highly complex subject and one that uses difficult terminology. I am therefore summarizing some highlights of the paper in a decidedly simplistic way. If what you hear in this video does interest you, then I recommend reading the full paper, which is open access and listed in the description below. The Serranía de la Lindosa is a sandstone outcrop stretching over 20 kilometers along the Guayabero River in Colombia. It's a warm and humid region that borders the Orinoquia savannas to the north and the Amazon rainforest to the south. Until 2016, political unrest meant research there wasn't possible. However, since then, the Last Journey project has been carried out by members of the European Research Council. Their archaeological excavations have determined that mobile groups occupied the area during the late Pleistocene, so around 12,500 years ago, and that these people survived by hunting, fishing, and exploiting plant resources. The region has been home to many different indigenous communities. Today, indigenous people living close to the rock art are no longer creating it, but ethnographic research with them and other groups in the Americas has helped to provide insights into the role the rock art likely played in the lives of their ancestors. It is possible that uncontacted communities in the neighboring Chiribiquete National Park are still creating rock art. There are hundreds of rock art panels in La Lindosa containing thousands of motifs, which include depictions of humans, animals, therianthropes, and flora, as well as geometric shapes. Therianthropes are human-animal hybrids. One well-known example is the site of Cerro Azul, an outcrop measuring 400 by 150 meters that's covered in thousands of red ochre motifs forming 16 separate panels. Red ochre pieces with signs of grinding were excavated there from contexts dating to around 11,540 years ago, and painted rock fragments were excavated there from contexts dating to 10,280 years ago. So, although the actual images at Cerro Azul have not been directly dated, their creation in the late Pleistocene is inferred from the excavated finds. There is an ongoing project to date them directly, though. There's also no clear chronological separation between the different panels at this stage. The research paper concentrates on 6 panels from the Cerro Azul site. These are named as Corunchos, Demoledores, Las Dantas, El Más Largo, Principal, and Reserva. Las Dantas, shown in Figure B, is in a rock shelter and contains 998 images. El Más Largo, shown in Figure D, is also a rock shelter and has 1,031 images. Principal in Figure E has 244 motifs, Corunchos in Figure A 153, and Demoledores in Figure C 171. All of these panels are well preserved and were photographed by drone as well as traditionally in order to create 2D and 3D stitches of each of them. Each motif was given one of 4 descriptive categories: figurative, geometric, abstract, and unknown. The figurative category was then divided further into humans, animals including therianthropes, schematized figures, handprints, flora, and objects. In the paper, only the meaning behind the figurative images is analysed because there's more ethnographic information related to these than the others. The motifs at Cerro Azul vary in the way the figures are presented. Animals are depicted both individually as well as in groups. Some are static, others are in motion, and they are shown either in profile or as a top-down view, although the latter is only for crocodilia, lizards, turtles, and stingrays. Only one example of a portrait view exists, and that's bats. No genitalia are depicted on animals, even though they are shown on human figures, and the way in which their feet are painted varies. There are also paintings of therianthropes. They are mostly bipedal and shown in motion without genitalia. In the paper, the authors discuss the rock art in an ethnographic and ethnohistoric context. Rock art research at many sites in the Amazon and in the rest of South America over the years has determined that motifs are seen by indigenous people as manifestations of cultural and spiritual beliefs, and also as a form of communication. The goal of the artist is not to create a realistic depiction of an animal or a human figure, and how technically skilled they are is also of little importance. Instead, the process of creation and the meaning behind the motifs are the central focus of the indigenous groups. The word pigment is often associated with the terms potency and supernatural spirit because emphasis is put on the creative process itself rather than just the final product. Many motifs lack taxonomic characteristics because the objective is not to represent a true-to-life painting of a specific animal. Also, the motifs are not necessarily seen as completed, but still evolving, and they tend to have multiple meanings associated with them, which can also be quite fluid. The therianthropes are meant to depict transformative states, so nothing final. Perspectivist and animistic cosmologies, shared by groups in the Amazon, view everything that grows and moves as having a soul. In this worldview, humans and non-humans have a fluid perception of reality from different viewpoints. Members of the same species can see behind the outer shell of other members, but only shamans known as peis can cross the boundary between species. Shamans are ritual specialists who have visionary skills and can see into the present and the future and move between the human and animal realms. Interestingly, international rock art research has shown that a relationship between the ratio of animal motifs and the species found in nearby archaeofaunal assemblages does not really exist. The same correlation has been found at La Lindosa. Also, at La Lindosa, there are no scenes showing the preparation and consumption of food. It's possible that the lack of larger mammals in the zooarchaeological assemblage is because such animals were seen as sacred and not hunted. Today, they are often viewed as embodying spirit ancestors. In the Amazon, this is particularly true of the three largest mammals, the tapir, the jaguar, and the deer. So essentially, the rock art is not wholly about hunting for food. The hunter-prey relationship is more complex than that. Serpent motifs at Cerro Azul were likely also painted for other reasons than snakes being a source of food. Amongst indigenous groups, they're seen as liminal creatures moving between land and water and between one realm and another, just as a shaman does. Also, they are viewed as being reborn after shedding their skin, just as shamans are reborn after certain rituals. Large snakes, such as anacondas, are thought of as ancestral or celestial creator beings and are often associated with the Milky Way, the sky, and waterways. As mentioned earlier, feet are depicted in different ways at Cerro Azul. Sometimes they're not shown clearly at all, and the number of digits varies. Animal tracks are also not shown. This supports the idea that anatomically accurate information to aid in hunting was not being communicated here. Instead, as per the ethnographers and ethnohistorians, a complex animistic framework existed as it still does today. At Las Dantas, a male human figure is shown hunting a quadruped with a spear, and another two similar scenes close by show a canid and a deer. An image at Mas Largo shows two humans connected to a deer. Once again, these were not necessarily meant to be taken literally, but to show spiritual connections between the people and the animals. The scene at Mas Largo depicts male human figures hooking fish with lines next to large concentric circles. Although these circles look a bit like ripples in the water, they are more likely to be what ritual specialists see in altered states of consciousness. This figure shows geometric motifs depicted at Cerro Azul and those that were drawn by Tucano shamans in altered states of consciousness. Fish and fishing do play an important role in the animistic ontologies of local groups. Female fish beings feature in various accounts, as do shamans transforming into caimans, a sort of crocodile. According to an indigenous elder, the U-shaped motif shown here at the Principal site is a portal to the Maloka behind the rock face. The Maloka is a spiritual house which is represented by the painted rock shelters. Another aspect of the animistic framework within Amazon indigenous groups is the negotiation for a good hunt with a forest spirit known as the Master of Animals. According to ethnographic and ethnohistoric research, sometimes spiritual specialists will meet with the Master of Animals through ritualized trances and by painting animals in rock shelters in order to negotiate a good hunt. In this context, geometric paintings next to the animal motifs represent fertility. The rows of dots depict semen and the zigzag lines symbolize future generations. The relationship between shamans, rock art, hunters, and prey is special and nuanced. And this is not just found in the Amazon, but in other animistic traditions around the world. The Desana have a word yi that means both jaguar and shaman. At the site of Principal, an indigenous person told the authors of the paper that a ritual specialist takes a type of snuff called yage and transforms into a jaguar, which can then walk around all areas of the world. As well as having a special relationship with animals, shamans in the Amazon also incorporate plants into their worldview. Many different types of plants are depicted in rock art, including hallucinogenic types such as yopo. Both yopo and copal seeds were found in excavations at La Lindosa. Copal is used as ceremonial incense by multiple Amazon groups today. There are also interesting motifs at Cerro Azul that show plants with human-like legs. One creation story attributes the rock art at La Lindosa to the world-created being Laman, who wanted to record how life had begun and so painted the motifs whilst throwing a party where he sung and danced. So as you can see, indigenous mythology is intimately connected with rock art, and the way in which these paintings are seen by indigenous groups today reflects a complex relationship between them, their ritual specialists, animals, plants, life, death, the spirit world, and the ancestors. As the authors of the paper point out, continued rock art research must take an anthropological approach in order to aid in their interpretation. That's it. Thank you to my patrons and channel members. Don't forget to hit the like button if you didn't already, and I'll see you next time.